one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, everybody. Today is July 13th at 6 o'clock. We're here for the Rutland Town School Board meeting. It's an interesting one. I have to sit here and speak with an app, so I'll keep it short. I understand we're going to, for the most part, we had limited items on tonight that we're going to take up in executive session. But in every meeting, there's a public comment period. I understand that some people would like to make some statements, so I would certainly open up the floor in just a minute to you guys. I would implore any board members, if there is a response, to keep it short. The people speaking also keep it short for 2 to 4 minutes if you can, so we can get through with it without a several-hour meeting. And then also board members can choose to refrain from responses, keep them short, but we're going to try and move through this in a pretty expeditious manner. So I'll turn it over to first thing, approval of the agenda. Anybody have any changes, additions, or deletions to the agendas that's set forth tonight? Hearing none, I'll move over to the public comment period. Is there anybody that would like to speak publicly?
Hi, this is Sandy Solero.
Hi there, this is Matt Branshaw, the chair of the school board. I'll give you a few minutes. What's going on?
I just wanted to Solero to talk because I didn't
hear her. No.
We can't hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sandy Solero.
Hey Sandy, you're breaking up a lot. Are you on a cell phone somewhere?
Yes, I'm on a cell phone. You might be able to hear me better now.
I can hear you better now.
Okay. I live in Rutland Town with my husband, Jonathan, my son, who just completed 3rd grade, and my daughter, who just completed pre-K. In all of my interactions with Rutland Town School, I have been incredibly impressed with the teachers, counselors, and support staff. My children's teachers have been nurtured and loving while presenting rigorous and developmentally appropriate content. RTS staff has demonstrated patience, knowledge, professionalism, and expertise in the area of education and child development. More than anything else, educators at RTS have consistently shown tremendous dedication to their work and to the students. When the schools across the nation abruptly shifted to remote learning, this tremendous dedication did not wane. In fact, it was ever more present and obvious. On top of weekly communication about assignments, my children received personalized handwritten cards, daily electronic messages, videos, songs, birthday messages, condolences when our dog passed away, hands-on STEM challenges, personalized book read-alouds, recorded yoga sessions, and a home visit. And that was from a teacher who had a broken foot nonetheless. Whenever my son completed and submitted an assignment, he received timely and constructive feedback. This personalized and personal feedback is an invaluable component of the learning loop between students and teachers. There wasn't a doubt in my mind about the staff's commitment to their work and students during this unprecedented time. Despite my positive experience, I am aware of a few concerns about the way in which RTS provided remote learning and the time students spent attending synchronous class meetings. I agree that if remote learning continues, RTS, along with every other school in Vermont and across this nation, could find more effective ways to hold synchronous classes and present educational, asynchronous videoed lessons. However, it is important to recognize that Rutland Town School made decisions on the best interests of all students. Rutland Town School is a public school. It has the responsibility to provide equitable and accessible learning opportunities for all students. Lengthy all-day synchronous lessons would not have been accessible or feasible for all learners and families. It is also developmentally inappropriate for children to learn that way. Schools across the nation followed limited and sometimes conflicting guidelines in March about remote learning. There were some guidelines about the use and length of synchronous video lessons, but unfortunately, there was limited evidence-based research about this topic and other practices related to remote learning in K through 8 schools. I am certain that if such research existed, RTS would have followed it because the programs, strategies, and initiatives RTS typically uses are supported by valid and credible data. Community members may have opinions about what works for their family or their children, but as we move into the next school with its myriad of uncertainties, I am confident RTS will seek and utilize teaching and learning methods that are based on solid professional pedagogy rather than a layman's preference. Going back to the synchronous class meetings, it is also important to recognize that teachers' contact time with students is only a portion of their workday. For teachers, in-class lessons and activities are a lot of performance. Hours of planning and prepping go on behind. This off-stage time likely includes daily meetings, attendance responsibilities, reading and replying to emails, ongoing professional development, collaborating with colleagues, planning and preparing lessons, differentiating lessons to meet the needs of all learners, creating assignments, assessing work, and providing feedback. When remote learning began, teachers maintained all of these responsibilities while taking on additional work. They had to learn new methods of communication, new ways to motivate all students, some of whom were disengaged and disconnected. Teachers had to adjust their current curricula. They had to figure out ways to reach students who were not showing up. They had to learn how to use online platforms, and they had to find an entire new way to record attendance while many taking crash courses in digital technology. A teacher's workday was not at all shortened by remote learning. Remote learning, especially in intermediate and primary grade levels, is vastly different from in-person. And in my opinion, the traditional in-person system is actually more effective. However, due to the global pandemic, in-person schooling is continued. Clearly, that created numerous hardships, obstacles, frustrations, and challenges for everyone, including students, teachers, and parents. However, it is imperative for our community to recognize that this wasn't something school staff wanted. They had little control over the situation, and it is unfair that frustration, the challenge of stay-at-home orders, be directed at RTS educators. According to the Rutland Town School Board report, February 2020, quote, the main focus of the board is providing the best possible education to all students, end quote. The bedrock of a strong educational system is the utmost respect for its teachers and the professionalism of Educa. The board's sentiment in their report simply doesn't align with the established tone of last month's board meeting and comments about teachers not doing much or showing zero effort. The way in which the meeting norm, or lack thereof, permitted indiscreet calling out of specific teachers was divisive. I hope that in the future, as concerns arise, the board follows and directs us for the appropriate chain of command. Raising concerns or looking to improve the situation is crucial. But if we are truly seeking solutions and progress, communication must follow professional protocols. For example, personnel concerns could be directed to administration for discussion in private settings. The state's reopening guidelines for schools remain broad and uncertain. Now more than ever, this community must support hard work schools and educators for them. This is not a time for parents, board members, or educators to be adversaries. After all, school staff, board members, and parents all share a common goal: a desire to support the personal development and education of our children in a safe way. Let that shared desire be our guiding force as we move forward and work together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anything from any board members, administration? Any other public comment? Heather, could you just recognize yourself for the record?
Sure, I'm Lainey Sinclair. My son's Caleb Sinclair. He's been in Rutland Town since pre-K. And Rutland Town's been amazing with my child. He's actually on an IEP for some things, and they've gone out of their way to always be there for him. I have to say that from the beginning. I remember Miss Tetzai coming in and helping my son when he first came over. this remote learning, I was so thrilled and so awestruck in how well the teachers handled themselves. My son was in this Altman's class, and with this epidemic coming down like it was,
Matt, can I just interrupt you 1 minute? If you can, don't use children's names, students' names, and don't use teachers' names. That's how it got misconceived last meeting.
Well, I can say my son's teacher was amazing. The fact that they could put together packets as fast as they could for all the work the kids had, I could not believe what they were able to do. Not only that, but she hand-delivered that stuff to my house. She came to my home, dropped it on my porch, and brought stuff, and we were able to leave things to say thank you. The teachers had worked with him on his IEP. They reached out to me, and if he needed anything, they set up, he had 2 days a week with a reading teacher. He had 2 days a week with his speech teacher. He had the person working with him with physical therapy was talking to him once a week. His teacher set up so that he had classroom time, not only classroom time, but she pre-recorded classroom time that we could go on at any time of the day to go do. She gave us several app resources. She gave us several packets to go over that we could turn in, and I constantly send in information. The art teacher, the music teacher, the Spanish teacher. I can't say it enough. The teachers were amazing. I came specifically for this meeting because I heard that some of the teachers were put down, and that some of the parents were saying they didn't feel the teachers were there. I can tell you right now, all I had to do was say, I need help with this, my son's struggling in this, and my teacher made sure she had a one-on-one lesson to back up stuff with him. If I had problems with something else, all the teachers jumped to in order to help out. I could not believe how well that remote learning went. With what's coming up right now, that's what I was hoping the next school year was going to be, because the way things are set up, I don't think it's conducive for kids to learn in the environment that we have set up. It's going to be too stressful. And the remote learning that was provided was so great. If you actually reach out to the teachers, reach out to the school, your kids are going to do well. I mean, that was my experience. And so I wanted the teachers to know, and the school to know, I can't thank you enough. And I want people to understand that people are very fast to point out things that they don't like. But you don't have a lot of people that jump up to say all the great things that we're doing. And I wanted to take time to do that. So to all the teachers, to the whole school, thank you. Thank you for the work you did. Thank you for how you were able to keep up with my child and treat my own.
Thank you, Ms. Sinclair. Any other public comment?
Hi, I'm Jenna Chambers. Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thanks. So as you guys know, the school board knows I sent a letter with 3 specific questions that I'd like answered at this time. I also want to reiterate the flavors of the 2 comments that I've listened to. I could not be more grateful for the experience that my children have had at Rutland Town overall and specifically during this time. So my question number 1 for people who don't have the email is, why was the policy not followed on June 9th, 2020 meeting in regards to when concerns arise? My question number 2 is, what is the board members' understanding of what their role is as a board member? And then question number 3 is actually geared towards more administration. We had the opportunity to listen to some parent challenge experiences, and I was curious if the school received positive feedback. Because once again, if we've got lots of positives and a few negatives, we're gonna take stuff from both sides, and at the end, learn from it. And lastly, as a community member, I really, to the board, in all honesty, and you received my letter, I was really uncomfortable with how that board meeting went, specifically geared towards our teachers. I find it interesting, and I'm not there, but I find it interesting that someone just stopped a parent from talking about a positive experience, making sure that they weren't identified. Yet that wasn't done at the June 9th meeting. It was almost like a free-for-all for all these grievances. And I want to remind you, you've got simple behavior 101. People don't do better when you make them feel worse. So I'd like the answers to those 3 questions. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Jenna. So I'll respond briefly to that. We're going to be discussing a couple of things under personnel in executive session, and obviously there needs to be discussion about policy. These are extremely difficult topics to be having, and so I'll just respond briefly that first, there is obviously policy and procedure. There's then also the teacher's contract. In addition to that, we have parents there. We have free speech rights. And as government officials can't stop that, there seems to be a difficulty in navigating these meetings sometimes where it's the positive information can come in, but if it's anything negative, it needs to be moved to executive session. There's personnel issues, contract issues. Who said what? Was it a parent? Some of this may have in fact been parents when it wasn't board members. So it's a rather complicated situation. And it's disappointing looking back, and we're obviously going to have conversations about that as the board, and it's something that we are going to address, and I thank you very much for your email to us. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so my question is specifically, if this was not on the agenda, then how did parents who had all negative experiences know to come to the school board meeting?
I'm not exactly sure, but it was kind of like I'm sitting in a room full of people right now with a lot on the telephone, and it started at the public comment period, is my understanding of how we ended up there. So
Okay.
much is now, and I don't have you on the agenda necessarily, but you're here speaking with us, obviously. And my recollection anyway was public comment, but I don't recall exactly.
Okay, and so I'm here because I got a response. Who am I speaking with? Is this Matt?
Yeah, this is.
Okay, so I'm here because you emailed me back that you would be addressing these. So that's the reason. That's the reason why. So then my question is, what are the school board members' understanding of what their role is as a board member? What I saw on June 9th, nothing fit into the category of a school board member's duties or job, to be quite honest. And I'm concerned that the board doesn't understand their roles. And if I'm wrong, then help me understand. Is the micromanagement of staff your role as a board?
So unfortunately, that's a question I'm going to pass on, Jenna, and I just don't agree with some of the things that you've said in there. The board, I've heard that before, micromanages. I speak to the principals maybe once every month or two. I certainly wouldn't categorize that as micromanaging. The other is about the role of the board. I think board members understand their role, but it's often difficult because we're here also overseeing things, but we're parents of children at the school. We're grandparents. The other thing is that I think people are entitled to their opinion, whether negative or positive. And that's something that the board obviously has to discuss, and it's something that we have to review. But it seems your position is, Jenna, that it can only be positive, and if anybody says anything negative, then board members are stepping outside their role, and I do not agree with that position at all, and I'll leave it there.
Oh my God. No, I don't want to leave it there, Matt, because that's not my words. I think feedback on both ends is important, but we got to hear the positive and the negative. So then my third question is, and this is directed towards administration specifically, did you receive any positive feedback? And if so, how much feedback was given?
Yeah, I single-handedly received more positive feedback this year, Jenna, than I have in all my years of education. I have 81 years that I could throw on the table right now from parents thanking our teachers and staff for everything. So
and we forwarded those to the teachers who were referenced on those papers so that they got that personal feedback as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you. Yes, so absolutely, we received a lot of positive feedback. Thank you.
That's great.
If I could break in, this is Lynette Gallup, I'm on the school board. They were both positive. They were both positive and negative comments that night at the school board meeting. unfortunately, the negative, like always, gets more attention. I personally can't say the rest of the board. While it did stretch beyond the limits of what we should, because there should be no names or students or teachers, I need to know what is working, what is not working, so that looking at the pandemic, not knowing where we're going in the fall, we want to make sure that we have a more consistent output for remote learning. We want to learn what worked, what didn't work. And unfortunately, we have to hear the negative along with the positive to figure out that plan.
Absolutely, and Lynette, thank you for your comment. I agree with that. The issue that I took is, and it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like, let's be honest, there's a lot of feedback about this meeting, is that negative feedback or constructive criticism we'll learn from. That's not what I saw. I saw almost a berating, a humiliation of the teachers, and the bottom line is, it doesn't work. It doesn't make change. It does not do well for the morale of the school. And so that's what I wanted to communicate. And it sounds like I was able to do that. So thank you so much. And I'll continue to be, present and making sure that policy is followed, and also that our teachers know what a gift they are to our community.
Okay, and I agree, and thank you for writing the letter to us. But I do want to state that this is what I have against these tele meetings. You don't know who says what. So it's hard to be on the other side and just listen to know if it's a parent, a board member, teacher, or a visitor saying things.
Yeah.
So that is hard, but as a board, and I'm pretty sure I know the rest of my board, we were taking it as what was good, what was bad. And after the meeting, we talked to administrators or later in the evening. And that's why the survey went out, to see if we could get people to write back so that we have more or less something to look at, to compare, to strengthen our remote learning. I do not believe there were any board members present at that meeting, and we were all there, that said anything negative about the teachers. We may have said or expressed by our faces, whatever, that, certain things that were brought up, whether it be true or not, because we don't know, we're just listening, that, that were improper or shouldn't have been done. There were great experiences. And like I said, we're just trying to make remote learning better. Unfortunately, we still don't know where we're going in the fall. So I would prefer to have all the kids in school. I think the kids, when they don't have that socialization, they don't have that contact, they lose more than just education. Like I said, and we haven't seen the results of the survey yet, but that was just the beginning, the impetus of getting that survey out, so we know where we're going.
Well, and I think it's great too, like, because we look at, it sounds like Sarah said over 80 emails versus, a few people complaining. So, that gives some perspective too. So I'm glad that has come to light for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else on the line have a comment?
Yeah, I do about it, Stacey, actually. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Stacy. Go ahead.
So I was at the June 9th meeting, and I don't know what happened, but I think the point of the parents going to that meeting has been misconstrued. We all think the Rutland Town teachers are amazing, and none of us were personally attacking any of the teachers. We were just bringing to light that what happened this past spring was not going to work in the fall if that's what it was coming to. But we all love the Rutland Town teachers and think they do a great job. We just wanted a new plan moving forward to better homeschooling, if that's where we came from.
Thank you, Stacy. And I'll actually just respond briefly to that comment, that at the time of the Rutland Town School Board meeting, at that time, we were hearing discussions about Rutland School District possibly going to online learning in the fall. And I think that was the chatter. And unfortunately right now, a lot of things are just constantly changing on us. For example, at the time we sat down at that board meeting, the governor had stated that people were going to be, administration and teachers and staff were going to be wearing masks, but there was no discussion from the governor about the children in school. That came out a week later from the Department of Education. So I think there was some concerns, and exactly what you bring up, Stacy, is that we moved online in the fall, and what were people's reactions to what we just went through in the 3 months. So yeah, already within a month, the situation is slightly changed. It looks like we are going back to school, or at least it appears somewhat so. But anyway, that's one of the issues we're dealing with. And I think for a lot of people, it was going to be a struggle to then turn around and say, we're going to commit the next year to online learning. And that's just unfortunate. And I've been a little more hardline than everybody else, and it's my position. I'm entitled to it, negative or positive. But I don't see online learning with K through 5 certainly as being a viable or sustainable way. I've seen news reports that it's the future, and I just don't believe it, and I'm not ever going to vote along with it. And so anyway, it is important to understand, I think, that how the June meeting came, and it was about online for the fall. Are we going to do this? Are we going to open up the school? And things like that. And we're still wrestling with those issues today. And it's going to be a changing field for us. And at the rate things are going now, it's going to be interesting to see where we end up in August. But that's certainly, I think, at this point, one of the better things for us is to see where we end up. Instead of trying to make statements or come up with a plan today, because come the end of August, we may be in an entirely new situation again. And that may be as a result of the Agency of Education or the governor's office. So I'll open it back up for anybody online that would like to have any further comments for the board. Thank you, everybody. Anybody in the room? Any further comments from anybody? Ms. Sinclair.
I know you're talking about having back to school and how my concern is, especially the little ones. I can't see taking them out of school as we do and putting them back in school and then telling them you can't hang out with your friends, you can't talk to each other, you can't share anything. With my son, he has an IEP, and when I read the guidelines, how does it work if he's in the classroom and they say only that teacher can be in there? Well, all the other teachers that he has to have time with, and then actually having breaks. How do they even get a physical break? To me, I'm pushing for remote learning just because he can do his schoolwork and he can get a break and go outside and play, or he can move around freely. It can be so stressful for little ones. My littlest one's supposed to start pre-K. I can't imagine as a 4-year-old going in and you can't play with toys with each other or anything like that. So they're going to be very hindered and it's a very stressful, compact situation for children. I don't think that's conducive to learning. So myself, I'm really pushing to allow for remote. If it doesn't go to remote, I'm looking at homeschooling just because I just don't think they can learn under that environment. The teachers did such a wonderful job under remote. I would really hope that would be an option for parents to do with their children. I know it's possibly for those who have children who are sick or have medical issues along those lines, but I can tell you, my son, he's going to wind up in the office 24/7 because he can't stay in one spot.
Let me ask you a question. If someone was having a discussion, this has become an everyday discussion for me. Wherever I go, and I'll chat with someone about it, and messages, Facebook, people reaching out. One of the questions someone recently asked me is, for someone like yourself that believes that we should move to the online learning for the school year, why is it that instead of that you're not homeschooling, why is it instead that you're advocating for the entire district to move online? So they were curious, like, we want to send our kids back, but other people are asking us to go online. Why do you feel the whole school should just go online instead of homeschool?
I don't think the whole school should go online. I mean, there should be an option at least. For me, I prefer it just because based off of what is being given. I don't know how that's a good school environment. I'm pushing for it because I don't think kids learn in that environment. When you have them and they have to be like this, and they can't move, you're learning is through action and play. You're moving around doing stuff, but they're constantly have to worry about math or testing or exams or focuses. How's coaching when they reset for a long time? How does that work with their friends? They want to go outside of the classroom?
No, I understand that. So, but just a little more pointedly though,
Yeah.
It sounds to me like you're going to be going the home route. Why not declare a homeschool instead of advocating for the entire school to go online is what I'm saying. That would be an individual decision. You have the time, homeschool at home.
That's
why are you
possibility of
advocating for
going
full
homeschool,
school?
but my hope is to get him back into a regular school environment, so I want him to know the teachers. I want him to continuously have that, that one-on-one with the teacher. When we had homeschool last year, he worked with his teacher, he worked with all his other IEP teachers, and he had that interaction. When school fully opens up, he'll slide right in. Whereas by taking him completely out of homeschool and disengaging him from the school itself, then it's harder for him to go back in. If it has to be, then I'm going that route. But I would much rather prefer him work with the school. He's been doing it since he's been in pre-K. We wanted him as part of that. We wanted him to be working with other kids. If he's on the remote learning, he also got to see those kids and interact with those kids in a classroom environment. I would like him to stay with the school system, but if it doesn't work, then that's when I will go to homeschool. And that's where I'm concerned is when you guys figure that out, because if I have to pull him out to go to homeschool, I know I have to register him with the state. I have to have a lesson plan thing going on. So,
And I think one of the complicating factors is that date may be August 1st, whether they're going to change it or not. But we don't know what we're going to be looking at the end of August. But now they want you to declare a homeschool by August 1st, and it's creating a lot of anxiety. And it's really been tough on me as a parent too at RPS, and that it's taken us out of the control aspect of what our kids get. And so, I saw the struggle in the spring, and so to look forward to another 10 months of it is, it's hard. And so anybody else want to
I
add?
would just like to say,
struggling?
so I obviously was at the last meeting, and I have now served on the board for 2.5 years. And my takeaway from that meeting was kind of my overall takeaway to some of the issues with the school. I personally did not think it was a teacher problem in the things that I was hearing from parents. I think it was a systematic problem. I think at Rutland Town School, there are some systematic problems. I think the grading system is a prime example of a system that is very, very problematic and very, very confusing for a lot of parents. They don't understand proficiency. There hasn't been a lot of training and guidance. A 3.0 what may mean one thing to one teacher, and 3.0 may mean something else. You can't in the beginning of the year know where your kid's at because you haven't covered the proficiency. I've heard from some of our administrators that with the homeschooling, it wasn't always ideal because teachers couldn't get through all of the proficiencies. I think we were all thrown into this with no warning, no training, no guidance on what to do. It was incredibly, incredibly hard for families, for parents, for kids, for teachers. It was a hot mess. And I think everybody did their best, but I think from what I heard, and again, this was not at all directed at the job of the teachers. It was, this is very hard when I have multiple children and everybody is doing different things. I'm a full-time working parent. My husband's a full-time working parent. I have one kid that's given a packet of information that needs to do this all week. I have another child that has to go on Zoom at 10 and 2. I have another child that they need to go on for a teaching session twice a week. I have another child that it's video recording. I think that that's what the complaints, I viewed all of this as a systematic problem, not a teacher problem, not a teacher, just like the grading. Okay, and unfortunately, I think sometimes I was personally disappointed because I think parents are very, very afraid to voice their opinions for exactly these reasons, that they're going to be blacklisted. Their child's not going to be liked. The teacher's no longer going to like the parent. Somebody's going to take it personally. People are very afraid to share their opinions and their feelings. And I don't personally recall, and again, I'd have to go back and rewatch the tape, which I will do. Again, this is my perception. This is my opinion. You all may have a different opinion and different perception. But what I was hearing from a lot of parents was not the Rutland Town teachers did a terrible job. It's that this system is not working. We've gone through it the last 3 months. If we find ourselves in these same exact shoes again next year, what are we going to do to make it easier so that there's more consistency? That was my 2 cents of the meeting. That is kind of what I heard. And I think you heard parents say, just like you're hearing now, I may have to homeschool because I have 4 children and I work full-time and I cannot navigate all of these different things. This is overwhelming. So that was my opinion and my take on it. I viewed it as a systematic problem, just like I think the grading at Rutland Town is a systematic problem, whether it's coming from Montpelier, the SU, our school. I have sat on this board for 2.5 years, and we have debated this grading system, and it's still the same. And people still don't understand it. They walk away very confused. And I think the reason the parents came was we want to do what we can to work as a team and set whatever policies or guidance so that things can potentially be easier to navigate next year. That was my takeaway. So I just wanted to share what I heard. And I think too, I mean, the board members are not the spokespeople for the parents. And I think a lot of times, again, you know, parents don't want to always voice things. So I don't personally want to be in the role of having to, you know, constantly, you know, bringing up different things that we're hearing. I viewed it as a way to fix some things that were broken and to make things better for next year.
Thank you, Corinne. Anybody else want to add to that?
Just very quickly, I'm here tonight because I was home at the last meeting listening. And I personally was disappointed at the negative comments, and I agree there's a time for negative comments. But what I was wishing was for negative comments to be followed by positive reinforcements. And I personally didn't hear that from almost anybody, to be honest. I didn't hear it from administration, I didn't hear it from our chair, and I didn't hear it from the school board. So I'm here to listen and to say, wow, I want to know who's supporting our teachers. And that's why I'm here, is because, again, there was negative at the meeting. And so I came tonight to listen and hope that when there is negative, that all these very hardworking people behind me are supported. I know there was a time, Matt, for you to talk about the overwhelming desire that you have for us to be in person, and if we're not in person, then you had a very strong opinion last meeting about what you wanted to see happen. I personally took that as unsupporting our teachers. So that's my opinion, that was my perception. And I know, Sarah, you know, that there was a lot of positives. But going forward as a parent, I would hope that when there's time for negatives, that our teachers feel more supported. And that is my only reason for being here tonight.
Thank you, Teresa. So,
I do want to say, it's really tough to sit here. We have to listen to both sides.
Of course.
I believe at least the majority of our teaching staff knows that the school board is behind them. We know they're doing a great job. We love to hear the positives. Unfortunately, we also, like I said, in order to learn, you've got to look at history, you got to look at what was negative.
We can learn from that.
We don't come out every meeting and put roses on the teachers, and we know how hard they work. We know how hard they try. We know everything. We have to know what didn't work, so if we do go to remote learning, we can make sure that the program fits everybody as best we can. You know, we're here, the board is here not to tear down the teachers, the school, your bottom line is we're here for the students, for all of the students. So when we sit and listen, we, in our individual minds, I assume, I'm looking at, you know, an 8th grader, pre-K, wearing masks, for instance. Well, good luck on keeping masks on pre-K first graders, okay, kindergartners. So we have all this stuff running, but we have to let people have their say. Doesn't mean we're agreeing with them, okay? It's really hard to let people go on and on positives, and then somebody says something negative, we can't just shut them down. We have got to listen to their side also.
I agree.
Doesn't mean we agree, okay? And that's all. This whole week, when I saw Facebook the day after the meeting, I know I'm old. I thought maybe I blanked out for the whole meeting because it was a different meeting that was put on Facebook. But I'm pretty sure I was still there.
Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just mention a couple of quick things. You know, it seems like a lifetime ago since that meeting, but it kind of put a lot of things sort of in perspective. And even a day or two coming out of that meeting, I thought like it was just a totally raw time for parents, for community members, for teachers, for everyone. So I think that kind of aided in some of the frustrations coming out of the meeting. And I mean, I had, people ask me about it, and, I kind of took Lynette's sort of take, like, I drew whatever positives I could, because I knew there was going to be negative instances coming out of this, because it doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't even work for every student in every household, I mean, I see it with my two kids, so the system was, I think, the focal point. Whether or not that got conveyed, perception is reality. So I'm not here to argue that in any stretch. But I did, as I was kind of thinking through some things, I was going through some past emails, and when I wrote my petition to get on this board, one of the things I said was to recruit, enrich, and lift up all teachers, which in that particular moment, I think I failed, because I'm not saying that there wasn't things that were brought up by the parents that weren't, totally worth, bringing to the attention of the teachers themselves so that we can make it better, But it was also a moment that I, maybe could have brought the vibe or the direction of the conversation a little back to the community as a whole, as a school board member, as parents, as teachers. So in that, I feel like I missed the mark in that particular instance, but I think, I can't speak to all the board members, but I don't think any of us really felt like we hit a home run with that meeting, but I do think that we're all kind of shooting for the same goal, and I think that's why we're all here tonight. So that's all I have. But I just want to speak my piece on that.
I appreciate that. Anybody else?
If I may, Matt, sorry. Kelly Turner. I have a daughter in kindergarten next year. So I think one thing that's really important to remember about our teachers at Rutland Town, and any teacher in general, for that matter, is that they take what they do really, really seriously, right? And you all know that. You all know how much time and effort and how much care they put into what they do every single day. They wouldn't do it if they didn't like it. So I was at that meeting last month, and I was in the room. I heard, I saw facial expressions, body language, and I can tell you that it was really, really frustrating. I taught at Rutland Town during that distance learning time, and it was difficult for everybody. So when parents were saying that, this teacher, calling someone out, didn't do, well, they did this, this, and this, but this teacher did this, this, and this. You can't help but as a teacher to feel like you just feel bad, right? And I think that's one reason why I think parents as well as teachers, it was really hard to hear those things at that meeting. Not that negativity is a bad thing. I don't mean to think that constructive criticism we shouldn't hear, because we should. That's how we grow. But the way that meeting was conducted and the way that it went on and on and on and on, it was frankly frustrating and kind of disgusting to hear. So I just want to let you know, as a community member, as a parent, it was really, really difficult for people just keep spewing and spewing and spewing, and no one was like, I think at one point, if someone's at the board mentioned, okay, I think that's enough, let's move on from this. And nothing happened. It was Lynn, yeah. I thought it was Lynn, but that didn't happen. It just kept going. So I think that's one thing that you just need to keep in mind, and for the future too. I mean, we're all growing from this, right? We're all hot and bothered by this, we're angry, frustrated. So please just keep that in mind, because people worked really, really hard and they did their best. All of us did, even as parents. We did what we could for our kids, right?
And I just want to piggyback on that really quick, Abby, Tori. I had the privilege of speaking at the last meeting. Marcia and I were present, and you know, you have 18 teachers here and more online right now because we just want to show you that we love our kids and that this is our life, for lack of a better word. And I will say that one of the statements I made, and I still hold so true to this, is that we all want to improve. I don't think there's any year we haven't. You know, this summer I'm taking courses for the regular development I would do and for the distance learning, just in case, because we want to do better. We want to meet the needs of all of our kids. It works differently for some than others. And we're just here to do our best. And, you know, we want to show you how much we love our school, how much the kids are our priority. And I think that we want to make a better presence on that as a group of dedicated teachers. So, you know, there's definitely improvements that can be made. And one thing I keep saying, you know, when people have come to me too saying, hey, Abby, I watched the board meeting, like you were there, what do you think? You know, I like to kind of recuse myself and say, no, you watched it, think whatever you want to think. But one thing I keep thinking is when I have a child or a student in my class who's struggling with something, you know, I say, hey, look at all these amazing things you're doing. Look at how much A, B, and C has improved, and now we're going to work on D, and this is how we're going to do it. So I think if I could pick one thing where there was a fall, if you will, it's that. You know, I think that there is constructive criticism that needs to be heard. It needs to be taken in. And then we need to say, okay, what are we going to do with this? And maybe that was your purpose after that meeting. I don't know. You know, of course, I hope that. And I know a lot of you have had your kids, I've had your grandkids. And I hope you know my intentions as a teacher as well and my dedication. So I hope that's the purpose that we come out of this with. That we're all learning, we're all growing, we all want to improve.
Matt, if I could say one thing. The last meeting we had could have been better. And I take my share of the fault in that. And tonight, even Facebook, this is what, as far as I am concerned, and like I said, I've been on the board probably way too long. This is what makes Rutland Town so great. We have our negative people, but we bring those around. We have our positive people. We have the best teachers, the best school, as far as I'm concerned, in the state. That's the way I will die saying that. But this is why we stay up on that high level, okay? I know we don't express enough about the staff and how we appreciate you and what a great job you do. But we are such on the school board this year. I never thought so often, why the hell did I run in March again? But I mean, if I even knew 2020 was going to be anything like it is, I mean, it's really quite stressful for everybody. You are never going to please everybody. We will try our best to do that, but it's not, I've never seen it accomplished in any arena. But I just want to say, I think just having the ability to have the conversations that we're having is what makes us so good. If we didn't care, we wouldn't want to listen to you now either. So, you know we care.
Can you hear me?
Sure, who's this?
Andrea Hathaway McGlory.
Hi there. What can I do for you?
Hi. I was just wondering, my son has an autoimmune disease, and I'm just wondering if certainly we believe that the in-person school is the best option, but for kids that have autoimmune diseases that could be fatal for them, what kind of online, if anything, is going to be available for them is a concern that we have.
Thank you. I understand exactly where you're coming from, and that's one of the things I think the superintendent is working on, the administration's working on, and then we're also taking orders from the Agency of Education, and I have a feeling there's going to be a few more memos issued before we get to September 1st. So unfortunately, that'll have to wait till August, but I think you just hit the nail right on the head with everyone in the room's concern about what this fall is going to look like. And so unless there's any other comment, I'll end on saying this, but it's a really important thing, I think, in every argument, and me being an attorney, having gone to law school, is to look at people's biases. And you got to see in June one of my biases, and then I'm frustrated with this. I'm frustrated with the scenario and what we've gone through. And specifically, what I'm really frustrated about is that I had to come to grips in my family, in my household, with what was going on in March, while everyone else talked about staying home and safe. And why that is because I have a healthcare provider in my home. I had people that said, well, your kids can't come over there, you work at the hospital. And so that's disappointing that we had to come to grips with that in March, that this COVID crisis could very easily come into my home at any time. We had the doctor up the street talking about living in different houses. We confronted this in March, while a lot of people didn't. And so that's true in any argument. You got to look at people's biases and where they're coming from. And that's led to my frustration on a bunch of different levels, but primarily that we had to approach this then. And in addition to that, I'm seeing things that other people in society don't see. Right now, as long as you keep your masks on, there's going to be no jury trials at that courthouse. People are in jail right now, being held without bail. They're having a hard time getting into the courthouse, and we don't know if we're going to be able to get a jury back there. Another statistic you're not going to read about in the newspapers. Child abuse cases are way, way down. That headline's not out there. How did, COVID cure child abuse? And the reason those cases are down because there's no mandatory reporters seeing the children in school every day. So to sit here in these situations, each one of us comes from a different viewpoint. And when you're in a hospital family, when you got nurses in the family and you're already there in the room, it's something we had to confront. And for other people, they don't have that issue. And so anyway, I think it's a really frustrating point for everybody. I think it's really important that everyone going forward in this argument consider other people's positions and where they're coming from. And it's one of those situations, it's not as high up, but we're looking at a Roe versus Wade kind of case, and there's no winner on either side. There's no good argument. And this is a really frustrating time for us. There's people that feel strongly on both ways, from the autoimmune issue to other people in healthcare going, move forward, and that's what we have to do. And so there is no real clear winner or loser in this argument. Everyone comes from a different position in there, and I think it's important to understand that and who you're talking to. And it's been really hard on us having healthcare members in the family, the extended family, and being there at the table. It's something that we all had to confront in March where other people didn't. So it was, I think, the meeting did go on too long last time. There were some things that obviously we said that probably shouldn't. It's a frustrating time, and I know that the only thing I can do as a human being is get up every morning and try and be a better person, and we try and learn from that. And so anyway, we'll learn from that meeting, definitely we will, and we'll get up and we'll do it again tomorrow. And I don't know where we're going to be in August, but I can keep my fingers crossed and hope to see all of you guys at the school, God willing. And I want to thank you guys very much for coming down, and I appreciate it. It was good seeing everybody, and hopefully we'll see you back in September. And we'll work as a board, I know, and speak about this and talk about some things as well. But we can always do better, and thank you guys for that. So, anything else from anybody?
I just want to thank all of you for coming in. Those of you that have attended remotely, that last meeting was tough. I did sit back and listen, and as we've said, feedback is good feedback, but it's disappointing that these parents never follow the chain of command.
Right.
And that's what I take from it. That they should have just been stopped right there. Have you talked to the teacher? Have you talked to Sarah Debbie? Okay. So I know I've said it a million times to the board. I've said it to parents. I was online with teachers 11:30 at night with a student. We had a staff member up till 2 in the morning to get an 8th grader to graduate. Teachers, paras, delivering food, clothes. We did make DCF reports. We did do well child checks. I personally have never worked so hard in my entire life. And I can say the same for these guys. And if a parent just picked up the phone and said, hey, could you do this or this with my kid because I need that, it would have been okay. We had a family, both parents in healthcare field. That was the kid that we had to work with at 10 o'clock at night. He was babysitting his brothers during the day. Another kid was babysitting some other Rutland Town family, so we had to have his schedule altered. But can we do better? Absolutely. Will we do better? Damn right we will. To be an online teacher, you have to take an 18-credit master's course. We don't have that. So we are learning on the fly. We will do better. This is hard, but we have to just stick together. This is an amazing team of teachers. I said it before. I worked at 4 different schools. This is the best. So we know it wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't perfect. We're going to do better. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. So thank you guys very much for coming down. We really appreciate it, and we'll definitely be seeing you in the future. So this time I'll make a motion that we enter executive session.
Or,
Is there a second to that?
or,
Executive session on the basis of contract matters, personnel, legal, and negotiations.
I'll make that motion.
All right, do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Karine is going to second that. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, we'll take a quick 5-minute break and then come back in executive session.
Thank you so much.